I'm going to be reviewing the Lunar Chronicles series by Marissa Meyer. I'll start with Cinder because it was the first book. Found this at the library. It's basically a sci-fi version of Cinderella, but they changed it enough so that it's more interesting. So I didn't know a lot going into these books, but the first book is about Cinder Lynn. She is a 16-year-old gifted mechanic and cyborg. She's missing, I think, an arm, a leg, and most of her body, basically. She works as a slave for her stepmother, Adri, and she gets along with one of the stepsisters, but not the other. Peony is her friend, but Pearl does not like her. And her only other companion is Aiko, a service droid, sort of with a faulty personality chip, wants to be a real girl. And of course, everyone has a crush on Prince Kai. He's like this handsome to-be emperor. And he stumbles into her shop one day because his droid is broken. And she gets a glimpse of what it would be like to talk to royalty. And he's very laid back, hides under a big hoodie. And she gets basically roped into a sort of intrigue story because the current Earth is at war sort of with Luna. Luna is a planet, the moon. But the Lunars live there, and they have the power to control humans by manipulating bioelectricity. So they basically have the Jedi mind trick. And depending on how strong the lunar gift is, they can control like up to 10 people at a time, or specialized soldiers. They have these royal guards called thaumaturges, and they basically have control over up to like 10 specialty stronger wolf hybrid soldiers. So Queen Lavanna is the evil queen of Luna, and she wants to force an alliance with the current emperor, but he's sick with lematosis. It's like a lunar plague that's sort of killing everyone, and they would like an antidote. However, as soon as Queen Lavanna is able to marry someone with enough power, she's definitely going to invade. So Cinder gets roped up in this big plot because she herself wants to escape, but she finds something in his service droid. So what I really liked about Cinder is that it's a really quick read, for one thing. It's easy to read. The prose is simple. It sort of reminded me of a Hayao Miyazaki film because you've got the young girl main protagonist. There are droids and robots everywhere. There's lots of flying ships and cool things like that. It definitely reminded me of that. It gave me a Miyazaki vibe. Maybe other people didn't get that. But I also liked how they didn't just take the story of Cinderella and make Cinderella a cyborg and say that's enough. There's so many changes in this book. First off, Cinder is Chinese, and it takes place like a couple thousand years in the future after they've had a couple world wars and the Earth has been destroyed and rebuilt, and there's droids everywhere. Technology is so like built up that, you know, everything's technological now. And I liked how they changed things here and there. Like the evil queen was not in Cinderella. So what don't I like about Cinder? Well, I was reading the book and I was about up to here. There's about this much book left, I think. And I thought, wow, this is going to be great. And then the book ends because the reason why is the extra pages was a short story. So this book ends on a massive, annoying cliffhanger. And if you're one of the people that read this book when it first came out, you would have been really mad because you have to wait like a year or two for the next book to come out. And also there's this twist that's introduced in the finale, the last parts of the book. It's not really a twist because you can see it coming like a mile away. Even like a 5-year-old could tell the twist coming away. And I really didn't like how they presented that as a twist. It's the equivalent of saying like, by the way, Superman is actually Clark Kent, the reporter. You know, it's so blatantly obvious that it's not really a twist. Didn't like that aspect. Other than that, though, it's a quick, fast read, and it got me into the series really quickly. Scarlet is book 2. After finding out that the book abruptly ends, the first one, I honestly thought that each book in the series was like a standalone. I didn't know it was a series, so what the book series tries to do next is a sort of Avengers sort of build up. So each book will introduce a new character as well as the old ones and have them meet and sort of build up a team until the finale. So the second book is called Scarlet because it's about Scarlet Benoit. She's an 18-year-old French girl who lives on a farm, and she delivers fresh produce to restaurants and pubs in France. However, her grandmother has gone missing. The first book is based off of Cinderella. This book is based off of Red Riding Hood of sorts. So she always wears a red hoodie. She's good with a gun. However, her grandmother has been missing for 2 weeks, and people think the grandmother's gone crazy because she ripped out her ID chip, and she's, really distraught, trying to figure out, what's going on. And there's this mysterious cage fighter that gets involved. She gets involved with, and he decides to help her find what happened to her grandmother. Meanwhile, Cinder is going on her own adventure as well. She has to team up with this rogue captain named Captain Carswell Thorne, and they escape, and they're trying to figure out what to do. She's been hiding the fact that she's got her own secrets, and he's a bit of a rogue, but they're trying to figure out what to do because Queen Lavanna is trying to force the marriage still. And their paths collide into an explosive, pretty interesting climax. The first book sort of plays with kids' gloves a little bit. The second book just goes all out. The finale is full of blood and gore and action. Definitely took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting this, but one of the main, characters is one of those wolf hybrid guys, the cage fighter guy. So they fight other, wolf creatures, and I guess they are really feral. So you can't have that without, some throats being bit out. So there's some parts at the end of the second book that I didn't get. When they're describing the whole fight, the writer forgets to put who's fighting who. So I was like, wait, who are they fighting? And then I was like, oh, okay, they ended up getting that guy. And they leave it off another cliffhanger of sorts. A big attack happens on Earth, and they leave it for the next book. So book 3 is called Cress. It is about a young girl. She is a lunar. However, she doesn't have the lunar gift, like the Jedi mind trick thing. She is a shell. And she's supposed to be dead, but she has an amazing hacker abilities, I guess. So she's been kept on a satellite, and Cress is based off of Rapunzel. So Cress has been living on a satellite for the last 7 years. She is the sort of charge of one of the thaumaturges. She actually is in charge of keeping lunar ships hidden by manipulating things and hacking things. The only sort of human contact she's had is a robot sort of hologram of herself from younger, and watching a lot of earthen TV shows. So she's very dramatic in the sense that she likes to imagine things as soap operas, that one day her prince will come for her and they'll whisk her off of the satellite and go to Earth and travel Africa and things like that. And so basically Cress is found out by Cinder and her group now being the 4, the captain, the wolf guy, Scarlet, and Cinder. However, they get separated, and the third book is mostly a sort of it's a sort of hiding out sort of thing. Mostly focuses on Cress, and the other half is a sort of building up a slow revolution to overthrow the queen. And then there's this big political play they'd make at the end of the book, and book 3 ends. Book 4 is Winter, the finale. Winter is 800 pages. This is a thick book, and took me a couple weeks to get through this one because I'd stop and start, but it's definitely the least focused of all 4 books. I think the first one's only like 300-400 pages, and the book 2 and 3 are around the same. This one's double the size. It's getting a little convoluted, however. The 4th and final book focuses on Princess Winter. She is the adopted princess daughter of Queen Lavanna, and she hasn't used her lunar gift because she does not want to exert her will over others, so she gets lunar sickness, and she hallucinates herself turning into ice and blood coming out of the walls and things like that. And one of her guards is named Jason. He's in love with her, and they have this a lot of time is focused on these 2 characters. They're very boring though, and Cinder's trying to build up a revolution, and a lot of stuff happens. Now, I did notice that when I had all these books from the library, someone wanted to put a hold on them because I was reading them, but they didn't put a hold on the novella that I also had called Fairest. It is a book that happens in between books 3 and 4, a smaller book about Queen Lavanna's origin. I decided to skip that book simply because the person who was waiting for the 4 books did not put a hold on that one. So if that person's not interested in the novella, then I probably shouldn't be either. I didn't really care about Levana's backstory either. She's a very cartoonish villain, like really cartoonish, and I didn't really feel like reading a book to, I shouldn't have to read a novella on the side. If they wanted to include that character development, they should have put it in the books. Anyways, Winter is a long book, as I mentioned, 800 pages. A lot of stuff happens. Honestly, reading it wasn't that great, to be honest. The finale goes through all the usual revolution stuff. It felt like the same as a Mockingjay book, We bring in the rebels, a lot of people get shot, a lot of people get killed. The good guys win. So overall, Lunar Chronicles series is easy to read. I like that. However, after the first book, it feels like they're kind of like delaying the climax. By the end of the series, you've got like 8 or 9 main characters. You've got Cinder, Aiko, Wolf, Scarlet, Captain Thorn, Cress, the doctor guy, Kai. There's too many, and it's hard to like keep up with all the different things happening. I liked the sort of how there wasn't magic in the series. It's more of the Jedi mind trick thing. I really like that aspect. That's probably the coolest aspect of the book is, if you walk into a room and the people aren't under your control, you can control them to block other people from controlling them. And there's a lot of violence in that regard. You can make people stab themselves or shoot their friends. And other than that, though, the book itself, I like the first book the best simply because, I like the world that they were trying to build up. In comparison, book 2 is kind of boring. I don't really like Scarlet. 3 is the same. So this series, it's a big commitment. I mean, it's like 4 long books. If you're in the mood for something a little bit, not memorable, but entertaining, something fantasy, but not too harsh. There's some nice anti-racism stuff in here that's pretty cool. Other than that, though, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really bored and you want to read a lot of stuff. I only read it because I picked up the first book from the library for 25 cents and it ended on a cliffhanger, and I wanted to know what happened at the end. So that's what I felt about the Lunar Chronicles from Marissa Meyer.